If I'm looking and trying to figure something out, I need something to talk to me that might hit me. And it happens on TV because, every time they show a sporting event, they got the pharmaceutical companies back to back telling people how to fix the sickness on the same stuff that they sell them. So we get it.
Yep, we get it too, Chuck D. And that's why at KBLA Talk 1580, we don't black down.
Drop it! Our freedom of speech is freedom of death. We got to fight the powers that be. Fight the power! Fight the power! Probable cause, you don't have to break no laws. They say probable cause, probable cause, yeah. Probable cause, you don't have to break no laws. They say probable cause. Now who's this in the 4.6? About 20 to 5, got a truck full of chicks. Just leaving the disco, me and my man from the Knicks. Old dog later on because they live in the bricks. Jumped on the George Wash to the natural turnpike. Head feeling right from a long night. Whoa, I see Jake, so I let off the gas. So I was doing 55 when I passed this. I looked over, caught the shine from the rim of the Rover. You know his next move, pull it over. I pulls over to the right hand shoulder. Look through the rear view, we got his hand on his holder. He had this look, how this black get this car. You know these cracker state troopers don't know rap stars. He asked me for my license and my registration. See my New York tags and he asked me my.
He's in the studio. One of your favorite attorneys. He's in private practice at Douglas Hicks Law in Los Angeles. He was Trial Lawyer of the Year for 2006 by the Consumer Attorneys Association of Los Angeles. He's former managing attorney at the law offices of Johnnie L. Cochran Jr., where he worked for over 11 years until he started his own practice back in 98. He was successful in his work as coordinator of O.J. Simpson's criminal defense team, a.k.a. the Dream Team, a frequent commentator on all the national news shows, but he always makes time for the black-owned ones as well. Attorney Carl Douglas, good morning.
My sister, it is always a gracious pleasure being in your presence. Thank you for having me today.
Yeah, thanks for coming in. I mean, we've talked about this before in passing because of other cases that you have had and just because of the ongoing conversation here in Los Angeles where we're broadcasting from, about the way something called less lethal forms of weaponry are used by law enforcement. Indeed. It's become an issue of late with the ICE raids and the treatment of journalists, but it's an issue that you've been dealing with over the years.
Correct.
I mean, what is less lethal? It means you'll be less dead. What's a legal characterization of that?
It is really a misnomer, a misconception, because though it is indeed called less than lethal projectiles, even the trainers train their law enforcement officers that they are capable of causing serious injury or death when they are struck by someone above the shoulders. They're designed not to strike someone in the groin, but they're designed for what's called area dispersal, to compel a protester to leave an area that he should not be, either because he's trying to throw back a canister of tear gas or go to an area that is unwanted by the police. But they are projectiles. Different agencies have different kinds. The LAPD has one type. The county, the case that I was in most recently, had a different type.
Right, so that's the county. That's
correct.
Sheriff's, yeah.
Yes.
So they just designate it as such. It's not like a legal category. They just say this is less lethal because it doesn't have traditional bullets.
Yes, they are projectiles that sting, and they typically do not cause death unless it is targeted at an improper area, which is above the shoulders. And in fact, the training says you only target someone above the shoulders if it includes a deadly force circumstance, because those weapons are indeed capable of causing death.
And so my understanding was that the some of the police agencies, particularly LAPD, I don't know about the sheriffs, had changed their policy in regard to the use of less lethal weaponry, meaning they're not supposed to use it as readily.
Correct. The problem is that law enforcement officers often react because they are afraid. though they are trained to act in a certain way, you can't duplicate the stress, the chaos of a live protest circumstance that they often confront in Los Angeles, on the streets of Los Angeles. Because oftentimes the protesters do not look like them. They don't have a sense of humanity towards them, and they simply fire because they are often afraid.
But I mean, there's no training in the world that will teach you to see someone as a human being or a colleague if you don't see them as such.
Indeed, but when the object of your enforcement does not look like your brother or your uncle or your daddy or your granddad or your neighbor, there is a greater disconnect, I contend. That's why it's so important that people of color join police agencies across the nation, so we can hopefully work toward that.
I mean, you say that, Attorney Douglas, but I'm sure you're aware of the statistics that show that black officers kill and beat up black people even more than others.
I do understand the argument, but I contend that there has to be people of color in police agencies, assuming for the sake of the argument that you're going to have police agencies.
Right, okay.
Given that,
Right.
given that predicate.
Right.
Given that predicate.
In a non-abolitionist
Correct.
viewpoint where we do have cops, you're saying we need more cops of color, and I'm saying, okay, first of all, when you talk about black cops, the data shows the black cops kill and brutalize more. Maybe they're trying to prove something. And secondly, when you look at LAPD specifically and the LA Sheriff's Department, you've got a huge number of Latinos on the force, and I feel like a lot of the cases, I haven't seen data on this, but a lot of the cases that I'm tracking lately, you've got a Latino cop beating or killing a black person.
Indeed. I have been in this space 45 years. Shootings are one different category because people shoot on reaction, and shootings, I agree, are not color-based. Beatings, with rare exceptions in my experience, has been racially based. Rarely in 45 years have I confronted a circumstance of a black officer striking repeatedly a black plaintiff, potential, a black victim. Always the perpetrator of those abject, violent crimes are Latin, Asian, or Caucasian. So shootings are different because the circumstance requires split-second action, and everybody's afraid. But beatings, I have found there are public exceptions, of course, across the country we've all heard about, but beatings are different. Striking someone with a billy club is different. I rarely have encountered black officers who beat black plaintiffs, and I usually represent black plaintiffs.
Wow, that's interesting. I hadn't looked at the breakdown in that sense. Well, you've just had a rather humongous victory in this specific area. I want to talk about that case and what it teaches us about the so-called less lethal. I just think they need another name for that. But whatever it is, and perhaps they shouldn't even be authorized to use it at all. We'll ask that question. We'll look at the case that you have had a huge victory in just a couple days ago. All that coming up on KBLA Talk 1580.
Thanks for starting your morning off with a voice that speaks truth to power and the powerless, getting to the heart of what matters most in our community. This is where authentic conversation meets real action. From breaking news and politics to culture and community solutions, this is where you hear perspectives you won't hear anywhere else. This is where we come together, get informed, and make change happen. You're inside First Things First with Dominique DiPrima on KBLA Talk 1580.
Good morning, sunshine. You make my day.
Good morning, Doctor.
Doctor?
Hi, Doctor.
Doctor?
Dr. Jackson's practice is growing.
What do you mean we're still short-staffed?
He needs a good patient doctor.
How do we not have enough doctors to doctor all these patients?
And he doesn't have the patience to sift through hundreds of resumes.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. When you sponsor a job on Indeed, it's easier for talented candidates to find it, which makes it easier for you to hire them. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
Ready to order?
Yes. We're earning unlimited 3% cash back on dining and entertainment with a Capital One Saver card, so
Let's just get one of everything.
Everything?
Fire everything. The Capital One Saver card is at table 27, and they're earning unlimited 3% cash back.
Yes, Chef! This is so nice.
Had a feeling you'd want 3% cash back on dessert.
Ooh, tiramisu.
Earn unlimited 3% cash back on dining and entertainment with the Capital One Saver card. Capital One, what's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com for details.
Are you ready to be a part of the conversation that will help shape our nation's future? Get ready to join us for the Left Coast Forum, Saturday, October 25th at LA Trade Tech, where progressive voices will come together to tackle the issues that matter most to working families across Los Angeles and beyond. From economic justice to climate action, from healthcare to housing, we're bringing together the brightest minds and most passionate advocates for real solutions and real change. With workshops, 2 major keynote addresses, and a closing reception with great music and good food. It's the Left Coast Forum, where your voice matters and your ideas take action. Saturday, October 25th at LA Trade Tech. Brought to you by KBLA Talk 1580 and the LA Progressive. The future won't wait, and neither should you. Mark your calendar now to be there and be heard. Stay tuned to KBLA Talk 1580 for more details.
You're still glowing, flirting, grooving. You still got it. But your immune system weakens as you age, making it harder to fight flu, pneumococcal pneumonia, RSV, and COVID-19. Vaccines are a key part of any health routine and help strengthen your immune response. Ask your doctor or pharmacist which vaccines you need. Schedule in minutes at vaxassist.com. Sponsored by Pfizer.
This is the story of the one. As a safety manager at a manufacturing plant, he does everything he can to keep his coworkers safe. From finding ways to reduce risks to keeping safety supplies in stock. And for that, he relies on Grainger. Grainger offers a broad range of quality products and next-day delivery, so he can always play it safe. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Thanks for waking up with Dominique DiPrima on KBLA Talk 1580.
Yes, indeed. And you're waking up with Attorney Carl Douglas. Douglas Hicks is your firm, and you guys just notched a big W for win this past week or so. A $3.8 million award?
Correct. The largest verdict against the city or the county of Los Angeles arising out of the George Floyd protests that occurred in May of 2020. I'm proud of them.
Yeah, you should be. Wait, so out of all the protests of 2020, and there were a lot of incidents within those protests.
There was never a case that either settled or had a verdict higher than the 2 verdicts that I've gotten from protest cases. 3.8 for my clients Chellen Gluck and Caroline Gluck, and 18 months ago, $3.75 million for a young brother, Jamal Shakir.
Right. So let's talk, and they're both similar in terms of this so-called less lethal weaponry. Let's talk about the Gluck situation, since that was just recently.
Certainly. Chellen Gluck is a 67-year-old Japanese and Caucasian director, a member of the Directors Guild of America. He and his 23-year-old daughter and their 19-year-old son agreed to go and march as part of the George Floyd protests. He did not want them to go. They were over 18 and insisted on going and said, "Dad, if you want to watch out, why don't you join us?" He's a storyteller, so he brings his camera with him. They meet at Pan Pacific Park. It's a festive occasion. People are making signs. There's people that are speaking. They're gathering, all races, all ages, all colors. They start walking down 3rd Street to La Cienega. They walk up La Cienega to Beverly. They walk back east, and they start seeing some cars that are burning. Long story short, a couple hours later, they're at the intersection of Beverly and Stanley. There's a Jewish center at the northwest corner of that intersection. There's a post office as well over there. Mr. Gluck is parked in a car. There's a skirmish line of county deputies that are across Beverly. He's hemmed in, nowhere to go. There's crowds of protesters in back of his car. His wife, his daughter is in the front seat. His son is behind him, and he basically is stuck. And as a storyteller, he wants to get out and tell the story from both the protesters' perspective and the cops' perspective as well. So he takes his camera and starts shooting of the protesters, shooting pictures of the cops as well. At one point, there's a man he calls the smoking man because this guy has been smoking a cigarette the entire time and blowing smoke at the cops. Starts walking back from the skirmish line and he's been struck. There's blood drawing down his face. My client asks, "Hey man, what happened?" And he says, "They hit me in the face at point blank range." As Mr. Gluck puts down his camera and looks towards the cops, he feels a sensation in his nose that he says is like getting hit with a cricket bat or getting struck by a bus that strikes him in the nose. It whips his head around, causing a whiplash that he later has to get treated for. There is a less than lethal projectile embedded in his nose. 6 weeks later, after many surgeries, they pull a plastic covering from the projectile out of his nose. He suffers a traumatic brain injury. His daughter watches in horror, and she is pulverized and injured as well. He has cognitive problems, memory loss, focus and concentration. He has emotional problems, anxiety, PTSD, depression. He now takes drugs every day of his life just to survive. He will manage the symptoms from this injury for the rest of his life. His life will never be the same. $3.8 million is not enough for what he and his family are going through.
So, a jury agreed with you.
There was a jury trial. It was divided in 2 phases because, and one of the lessons in this and the concern for all Angelenos is, the county, after all of their investigation, could not identify who the officer was.
Could not or would not?
They were unable to identify, and I don't know what the motives are, but the circumstances were they could not identify the person whose picture we had from the back with identifying numbers on his helmet of who the shooter was.
That sounds dubious.
It's terribly concerning. It's terribly concerning.
How is it an identifying number if it doesn't identify the person?
It identifies the squad and the platoon, but not the individual from the rear. Those are 4/4. He's in the 4th platoon and the 4th squad. But there's 16 people on the squad, so they could not identify, or they did not.
Right, because everyone of those 16 people knew who it was.
Correct. But the concern is they had a trial. The jury awarded $3.8 million, 50% of what I asked for, and we still don't know the person who was responsible for firing the weapon. 3 of the 4 officers who testified have received promotions since that day. No one has been held accountable, and that's a frightening thought.
No one held accountable except the taxpayers.
Correct.
Who are going to pay that $3.8 million. And I know that's county as opposed to city, but both the city and the county of Los Angeles have huge budget deficits right now. And if you look at, the money that's coming out for these liability settlements is just, according to Controller Mejia, it's $1 billion in the past 10 years.
So what has to happen is the county and the city have to do better.
And that's just the city. That's not county. So what does do better mean? What does that look like?
There has to be accountability so that officers are held accountable for failing to follow their training.
Meaning personally accountable, meaning they need to...
Certainly, there needs to be an exploration of ways to hold them more accountable so that we can hopefully reach a day when we don't need Carl Douglas receiving $3.8 million verdicts, although I'll keep doing it until they stop paying me.
Well, yeah, of course you will. But the thing about it is, I feel like unless there's some financial, I know the average officer doesn't have $3.8 million, so the county or the city, the taxpayer is always going to be on the hook. But I feel like if they had some personal liability, some skin in the game financially, maybe they would think more before they did that stuff.
Well, that's where the failure to identify the officers is even more tragic in the Gluck case, because we had to sue the county, but we had to dismiss any individuals because we learned through the course of our investigation that they were not the ones most likely responsible. But the person that was responsible, no one on either side has to this day been able to identify. So
right.
it's difficult holding them accountable. There are ways with something that's called punitive damages to hold individuals, officers responsible. But that is so fleeting, so rare, it happens so little in a practical sense that there's no meaningful manner of
it
holding
happens
people.
so rarely because of qualified immunity, because of public attitudes, because cops rarely get even taken to court for anything in general, or why?
Because jurors refuse to hold them accountable personally. Cops are the last level of protection between us and them. That's why the Gluck case is so important. 45 years I've been suing police officers for acts of misconduct. This is the first time in 45 years I've ever had a trial where the plaintiff, was not black or brown. The plaintiff was an Asian American Caucasian white person. The plaintiff looked white. And usually when America looks at these cases, it's always them, some black kid who wasn't doing something, some brown kid who wasn't doing something he's supposed to do. This is someone that shows police misconduct can impact all of us. The George Floyd protests were unique because the crowds were all multiracial.
Yeah, they were everybody.
They were everybody out there.
But the thing about it is, why are you saying legally this is significant? I mean, as a lay person looking at it, the response feels like, well, okay, the person's not black, so they're going to give them they're going to give them the benefit of the doubt and pay them for their injury. If that person was black, they probably wouldn't have gotten the same result.
That is very possibly true, but now we all have skin in the game. That's my point. We all have skin in the game. White folks can be injured too. So white folks have skin in the game to make sure that our police are responsible, that they follow their training, because there's no connection. And only when there is a connection. You can see a picture in the LA Times this morning of my clients who look like many of the readers. So that connection hopefully can get others involved, because they lived in Palisades. They lost their house in the fire. They were politically active, the children are. They did this because they thought it was the right thing to do. And that story I'm trying to tell so that more people can get involved, to make a difference, to make a change.
Well, and contrast that with your earlier case.
Against the city?
Yeah.
He was the nicest young man I've ever had as a client in a police misconduct case. Jamal Shakir was in his early 20s. He is a young filmmaker, and he was filming during the protest, and he sees someone across the other side wearing a uniform that he recognized. It was his uncle, Eric Anderson. And we allege that Eric Anderson directed a shooter to target Jamal Shakir. As he filmed, he shot his hand, and he drops the camera that he's filming with. And when he bends over to pick up the camera, he shot again in the buttocks. We said that was targeted. The jury disagreed. We only won on another claim of negligence, that the officers fired a weapon and injured him. The reason he got so much because he cannot use his hands the same way, and he was going to live 55.1 more years. And the jury decided to give him money for 55.1 more years of future.
That's like an estimate. This is how long
Correct.
This guy will likely live. And so they paid him for those 55 years of not being able to use that hand.
But even then, the jury split was 9-3. We almost lost that case. We lost the case against the uncle, accusing him of being the one who directed the officers to shoot my client. Though he was shot twice, the jurors did not conclude that the shooting was intentional and targeted. That's how tough it is to handle these kinds of cases.
And this is, again, less lethal, supposed less lethal.
Two people whose lives will be shattered and impacted for the rest of their lives. Jamal Shakir cannot hold those 37-pound cameras anymore and do his own filming. He has to hire somebody now because his fingers don't work the same way anymore.
Maybe it's apples to oranges, but given what you were just saying about the Gluck case giving people that aren't black skin in the game, does the Jamal Shakir case show how much more difficult it is if you are black in that system?
Indeed, because I feel the Glucks were given the benefit of the doubt. The vote for whether the use of force was unreasonable was 11-1. I've never had 11-1 in my favor. For Carolina, it was 12-0. I've never had 12-0 in my favor when it's a black plaintiff. It's a terrible indictment on our system. It's a terrible indictment on this life that I've been trying to make better for the last 45 years of my life. But regrettably, race does matter, I argue, at least in Los Angeles, and you will ignore that to your peril.
Ignoring it to your peril. 60 seconds to news, traffic, and sports right here. And I'm going to figure that that's another reason why we need to sit on juries.
Absolutely. Whenever I come on your show, I encourage your listeners to register to vote. When that jury summons comes, please don't just hide it in the magazine stack or throw it in the trash. Come, because in juries, black people have power. We have power on juries. We bring a perspective that needs to be heard. I am passionate about the importance of people of color, all colors, all walks of life, to serve on juries. It will be a fascinating experience that you'll enjoy. But you have power.
It'll be a fascinating experience, especially if you get a Douglas Hicks case and you get to watch these guys work. We've got news, traffic, and sports, and then we're going to continue this conversation with Attorney Douglas. You're invited in on KBLA Talk 1580.
She's reclaiming her time on KBLA Talk 1580. More First Things First with Dominique DiPrima when we come forward.
I'm Bree Wood with BIN News Now. Black D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser says federal agents aren't helping, but admits Trump's law enforcement surge has cut crime.
We know that we have had fewer gun crimes, fewer homicides, and we have experienced an extreme reduction in carjackings.
She criticized masked ICE and National Guard troops, saying residents are living in fear. A black couple from Las Vegas has launched Coco Classroom, a black-owned AI-powered homeschooling platform. Michael Roebuck and Regina Snape Roebuck say it helps parents create personalized lessons with no teaching degree required. And a New York judge has dismissed a sexual assault lawsuit against Sean Diddy Combs filed in New York by a California man, ruling the 2015 claim was filed too late. Combs still faces dozens of other cases and awaits sentencing on prostitution charges. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Right now, there are young people across the world facing a tough choice: continue their dream of education or drop out to help their family put food on the table. You can help change their future in a single moment. See how far your support can go at unbound.org.
Is this the time? This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
At the U.S. Open Wednesday night, Jelena Ostapenko of Latvia learned a very valuable lesson. Do not mess with a sister from Chicago. Taylor Townsend, a 29-year-old African-American, was pretty much an unknown tennis player before beating Ostapenko in straight sets 7-5 and 6-1. When the players shook hands, Ostapenko told Townsend she had no class and no education. Ostapenko claimed Townsend was disrespectful for not apologizing for a point when Townsend's shot bounced off the net. Ostapenko said Townsend violated a rule in tennis by not apologizing. There is no such rule in tennis, even from an etiquette standpoint, where a player has to apologize for scoring a point. Townsend stayed in Ostapenko's face during the heated handshake and let her know she's a strong black woman. Townsend moves on to the third round Friday to play Myra Andreeva of Russia. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Yeah, y'all, come on. Pick up the drums.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we fight the power every day.
Yeah, gotta give us what we want. Gotta
gonna give us what we need. Hey!
I listen to KBLA and I love the commercials. I know what the commercials mean. I also, if I'm looking and trying to figure something out, I need something to talk to me that might hit me. And it happens on TV because, you know, every time they show a sporting event, they got the pharmaceutical companies back to back to back telling people how to fix the sickness on the same stuff that they sell them. So we get it.
Yep, we get it too, Chuck D. And that's why at KBLA Talk 1580, we don't black down.
Drop it! Our freedom of speech is freedom of death. We got to fight the powers that be. Fight the power! Fight the power!
Thinking about going electric? Now is the perfect time. Electric vehicles cost less to run, don't need gas, and need fewer repairs than gas-powered cars. You can also save with federal and state tax credits, and in some areas, qualify for rebates on home charging stations. To learn more, visit www.breathesocal.org. That's www.breathesocal.org. Imagine a world without heart disease and stroke, where every person has the chance to live a full and healthy life. Join us for a walk to save lives at the American Heart Association's Greater Los Angeles Heart and Stroke Walk, Saturday, September 20th at the Rose Bowl. Every step made and every dollar raised means more people learning CPR, more life-saving research, and more time with the ones we love. Sign up at heartwalkla.org. The LA Heart and Stroke Walk is sponsored by Optum, UCLA Health, Keck Medicine of USC, and Dignity Health.
Hello, I'm Joe Cordell, founder of Cordell & Cordell. Divorce is complicated, especially when your small business or professional practice is involved. At Cordell & Cordell, we understand that these assets raise unique valuation and allocation issues. For 35 years, we've helped doctors, lawyers, and small business owners navigate divorce with confidence. Call us at Cordell & Cordell. Let me tell you, I understand on a personal level, your business is much more than a job. It's your legacy.
1455 Frazee, San Diego. CordellCordell.com.
Hey, listen to this. All I needed was a new starter. Got a great deal on eBay. Did it myself.
Yeah, that's cool. But how about the soft purr of an upgraded exhaust when it fits just right?
For me, it's the little things, like these new windshield wipers from eBay I installed.
From small fixes to big upgrades, eBay has all the parts you need at prices you'll love. Guaranteed to fit every time. eBay. Things people love. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, where hate meets a scholarly match.
And Attorney Carl Douglas is here. We're talking about less lethal force. Just won a big case, the Gluck case, $3.8 million going there. Now I'm reading that they're taking it down because I didn't really understand the math.
Sure. Because we were unable to identify the shooter, we could not allege an intentional tort, that Mr. Gluck was intentionally struck. So we had to say it was negligent. They were beyond their training. They should never have struck Mr. Gluck. He was doing nothing wrong, and they admitted to that, to their credit. Whenever you allege negligence, though, there's something that's called, what's the comparative responsibility of the people?
Oh, here we go.
And the jury found that Mr. Gluck himself was 20% responsible for getting out of his car, and that the protesting crowd was 15% responsible for his injury. So the county only has to pay 65% of that total verdict, a total of like $2.47 million, which is still more than any city or county has ever paid arising out of the George Floyd death protest. And there have been hundreds of cases since then.
We have, I think it's an injunction at this point by a judge towards, this is not county, this is city, the police, LAPD, and their use of less lethal weaponry against journalists trying to cover ICE. And journalists have been shot, they've been bloody, they've been injured, but it seems that the department doesn't really follow the judge's directive.
It appears that way, and I'm interested to see how the judge will respond. There have been a lot of high profile and clearly misuse of less lethals. I can recall, and it seems to be malicious, that knowing they are journalists, shooting them with their backs turned It's really horrific. And these projectiles can cause serious, serious injury. I've been speaking to a lawyer who represents a client whose eye was blinded from a projectile. There was a case in San Diego of an old sister who received a $10 million settlement because she was blinded by these, quote, less lethal projectiles. So these are serious things. Given what happened over the summer with the ICE raids, you see how blatantly and indiscriminately they can often be used.
I mean, the crazy thing is we're stressed out about ICE and the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI and all these, the National Guard, the Marines invading our city and occupying our city. But when you look at those protests, it is true that the people that are beating up journalists and protesters with batons and firing those rubber bullets at them are not ICE. They are local law enforcement.
Correct. The National Guard doesn't have less lethals that they use in cities. They're all local law enforcement agencies, the LAPD, the county sheriffs, and they have different weapons that they use as well.
So this is an us problem. This temporary restraining order was put up in July. We're not talking about ancient history now, but these cases continue. So you said it'll be interesting to see what a judge does, meaning what options would they have?
There has been such a thumbing of your nose at the role of the judiciary, in part because of the abuses of the president in Washington, that the respect for the rule of law is really being challenged. And I'm interested to see how strong the judge will enforce and punish this clear violation of the judge's directive.
I mean, but how do you enforce and punish? If you're a judge, you don't have your own police force. You don't. I mean, I guess you can jail people, but you can't jail a whole department.
Money talks, and you can impose fines or other kinds of sanctions. And I have seen, Dominique, money and the payment of money being used to change the way law enforcement acts. I remind everyone there used to be a time when brothers and Latins were choked out by the chokehold.
Right.
And the LAPD chief, Daryl Gates, said it was just something about the structure of the neck of a black person, why they have a particular proclivity to die from a chokehold. Because working in Johnnie Cochran's office, worked on cases where it began costing the city too much money to pay these chokehold cases. James Bency was one of the cases that happened, that they changed the policy. And no longer do they kill black people with chokeholds. Fortunately, there's a technique that happens where LAPD will use a taser and hold it against the body, which is called a drive stun mode. I represent Keenan Anderson, January the 3rd of 2023, who was tased in a drive stun mode. It was videotaped, and now, because of the outrage from his death and the anticipated payment that they will have to pay to his 7-year-old son, the LAPD no longer uses that drive stun mode technique.
They're not supposed to.
Well, so they haven't since then, at least.
Okay, well, that's something. To me, the fact that a judge has to issue a temporary restraining order to forbid officers from, quote, I'm quoting the LA Times here, intentionally assaulting a journalist who is gathering information at a protest, or that they're not allowed to stop journalists from going into protest areas that have been closed off to the public. The fact that a judge has to tell that to a police department is the whole problem.
For sure. And the fact that officers don't have an abiding obligation to follow that order and will still do what they think has to be done in the moment is the greater problem.
Abiding obligation, meaning they're going to do whatever they want, basically. Correct. Is what you're saying in lawyer speak.
In the moment, they're going to do what they want to do and worry about it later.
And have no accountability, basically.
That's the problem as well.
Can we ban less lethal weapons? I mean, what? No.
There is not the political will to limit policing because the majority community still considers the police the last protection between us and them.
back to what you were saying about this Gluck case.
Correct.
Which is, showing the disparities between the way victims in the court system are viewed by juries.
Correct. And so look at the picture in today's LA Times. He looks like most of LA. And if it can happen to him, it can happen to you. We are more connected than you believe.
So you talked about the Mincy case and other cases that got Daryl Gates, the notorious police chief at that time of the LAPD, to ban the chokehold.
It keeps me going because I've seen benefits from what I do.
Right.
A civil rights lawyer making change for all of us, and that keeps me going.
So, but you don't have hope that we can limit these supposedly less lethal weapons. You feel like the political will is there just to see a repeat of what happened with the chokehold, because these are expensive. This right here, these two cases, your two cases alone is like $7 million.
Indeed. The powers that be will take the position that there's casualties in every war. Cops always say, 'tis better to be judged by 12 than carried by 6. That's just the way it is. I wish they would put me out of business, Mr. Prima. They won't. They never will. Regrettably, they never will.
Yeah, I mean, I get they won't put you out of business, but we're talking about the impact of what you've done. And I remember last year we had, I don't remember it detail for detail, but I do remember the conversation about what types of less lethal ammunition the cops could use. And there was some limiting of certain types that were considered more likely to injure. And that gave me hope. Well, just like I think we should ban high-speed chases, which cops should not be chasing people through the streets. You can follow them with a helicopter. You have drones. There are cameras everywhere. They're going to run out of gas. Why are you endangering civilian lives?
Indeed.
It's the same kind of thing with this less lethal weaponry for me, because most of the time, the tape I see, you could have contained that crowd. You could have contained that human or those 3 humans without doing that, without endangering their lives.
You have a progressive eye and you see things differently than most, regrettably. What many see is sheer chaos. There's tear gas, people throwing tear gas back at the cops. They have shields, they're throwing bottles, they're throwing rocks, they're throwing concrete chunks. And we need these police to keep us safe. That's. I wish it wasn't that way, but that's the way it is, regrettably.
So, what is the solution when it comes to, or what is the, not even solution, progress when it comes to less lethal weapons? We just have to keep getting shot by rubber bullets, poked by batons, whether we're journalists or people exercising our right to protest?
Until enough of us care, it's only the squeaky wheel that gets any oil. And until enough of us care that the politicians want to change. They have made some modifications on using less lethals and having them directly targeted. But so long as there continues to be occasions when the public believes some response is necessary to quell the outrage, to quell the masses, to quell the protests, there will never be an elimination of less lethals, I don't think.
Morris says that's why he says that's why I protest solo. Beautiful materials, but solo protesting makes it difficult to harass me. I've been warned by security experts that I should stop going to protest by myself, because you need to have a witness to whatever happens to you or doesn't happen to you, especially an ICE protest where they can kidnap you, take you into custody, and no one may know where you went or even what agency took you. It'd be nice to have a witness to tell your family what happened to you.
I understand the advice. Wholeheartedly, I understand the advice, because it's difficult. There was not an independent witness in Mr. Gluck's case that we were able to identify who said, yeah, I saw what happened and what happened was wrong. So I get the advice.
Talking with Attorney Carl Douglas, less lethal weapons is the conversation, and the case he just won against the county, $3.8 million, and it, life-changing injuries, but less lethal nonetheless, because your clients are still living to testify. Continuing this conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
More of First Things First with Dominique DiPrima when we come forward.
It's never too early to start talking about money in realistic ways with your kids. JP Morgan Chase navigates how to educate your kids now about creating long-lasting, healthy money habits. Whether your kids are in elementary school, high school, or college, now is a great time to start a conversation about ways to create healthy money habits as they grow, ultimately benefiting their financial future. Talking about money in a realistic way to support your kids' lifestyle and dreams, your first banking account geared towards high school or college. It's never too early. Explaining the basics, what you earn and what you spend, building financial confidence starts with getting organized. Learning and practicing vital money skills now will stay with them for life. Tools they will have to stay on top of their finances and achieve their goals. This segment is sponsored by JP Morgan Chase.
Dr. Renee here. Did you know this time of year is considered peak asthma season because we typically see a spike in asthma-related hospitalizations? If you have asthma and are having difficulty breathing despite medication, it's time to check in with your doctor so you can help avoid landing yourself in the hospital this season. To learn more about managing your asthma, visit www.luma-edu.com. That's LUMA-edu.com. This message is brought to you by Amgen and AstraZeneca.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. LA County's new Justice Care and Opportunities Department, or JCOD, is here to support justice-involved individuals and their families. The JCOD Support Center is now taking calls at 1-833-LACJCOD. That's 1-833-522-5263. Available 7 days a week from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m., the Support Center is your one-stop shop for re-entry issues and court support. They offer court reminders, connections to local services, transportation assistance for housing, court appearances, and childcare. The JCOD hotline provides personalized help to connect you with services that you need. And don't forget to check out justiceconnect.org for more information. Remember, it's free and available every day at 1-833-522-5263. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
My ride smells just right, just right, just right, just right.
Y'all gotta try that Febreze car.
Just right, just right, just right, yeah. La 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 la. With up to 40 days of consistency, on low Febreze car clips right on your vent. You know my car's my happy place. Keep that smile on my face when it smells just right, just right, just right. Yeah, breathe happy Febreze. La 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 la.
Lena Bloom for the Bail Project. Imagine you're stuck in a jail cell and you can't afford bail and someone offers you a way out. Just plead guilty and you can go home and kiss your kids goodnight. What do? What thousands have. You plead guilty whether you are or not. Cash bail makes poverty a crime. That's why the Bail Project helps those who can't afford it while fighting to end cash bail. Because freedom should be free. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
The conversation continues right now with Dominique DiPrima on First Things First.
Attorney Carl Douglas is here. We're talking less lethal weaponry, and congratulations to Douglas Hicks and your big victory here in this Gluck case, but also, Jamal Shakir case, even though you didn't get the total result you wanted, he still walked away with over $3 million in that case. But they're asking in the chat about qualified immunity. Journalists don't have qualified immunity, right? Qualified immunity is a legal principle that applies to government officials.
And protects police officers from being sued. It's a federal concept that is controlled by federal laws, which is one reason why 90% of my cases are filed in state court, because there is no qualified immunity. But it allows a shield for police officers to be protected against lawsuits when there is a uniqueness about that particular circumstance that officers could not have known their conduct was illegal.
So, that's another aspect to why, at least federally, we wouldn't see accountability for cops in these less lethal cases. And doesn't that qualified immunity patina, the vibe, if you will, translate to juries in any jurisdiction? I mean,
well, federal courts are different than state courts. In California, we're lucky because the state court system affords a healthy civil rights law. So litigants have the right in California in state court to seek attorney fees and many of the same kinds of damages that are limited in federal courts across the nation. Federal juries tend to be more conservative than state juries. The processes are different. The laws are different. So most civil rights lawyers file their cases in federal court. I prefer, and we at Douglas Hicks Law prefer state court.
That makes sense. So it's not just the attitude of the jury or the likeliness to convict, but also the rules and regulations about what you can recover and what you can ask for.
And the jurisdiction. The Central District of California goes from the Orange County line to Riverside to San Luis Obispo, as opposed to 20 miles from the courthouse for state court cases. So I'd rather have cases where there's a more concentrated pool of jurors that look like me.
Right, jurors that are actually connected to the region where the incident is unfolding. That qualified immunity technically also could apply to other government workers. I know Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley has a bill and qualified immunity, which Black Lives Matter and Justice Families are working to try to pass. Highly unlikely in this administration.
That's being kind, calling it highly unlikely.
Impossible?
Impossible.
Under this administration or any administration?
Impossible until Trumpism is in the background of our memories. So a change in administration will not change the tenor to allow for the elimination of qualified immunity, because there's not the political will to limit the scope of police officers doing policing that protects us from them.
It's astounding to me because the number of black people and all people killed by police has not slowed down since 2020. In fact, it's increased every year. Just because you're not tracking it, just because it's not in the headlines, it doesn't mean that it's gone away, but yet we don't have the political will. I mean, it's just a matter of time of normalizing the change. There was probably a time when you didn't think they would ever outlaw chokeholds.
Indeed. So I never say never, but it's not going to be anytime soon.
Not going to be any time soon. I don't know. For those of us who like to go to protests because we think it's the right thing to do, what advice would you give as a lawyer in terms of dealing with, less lethal weaponry? What I've seen and what I've heard from folks I know is that are protesting now is that there's less warning and the possibility that you won't get any warning at all before you're fired on tear gas or, taken down with so-called non-lethal force.
Advice is always difficult because on one hand, I'm a strong believer in the value and the beauty of protesting, and I'm a strong proponent of the First Amendment. On the other hand, I see it after the carnage. I see how the lives are impacted. I see how the misery is inflicted, and I see the loss of accountability and how bad that is for our society. But I cannot say anything to discourage someone to peacefully protest their beliefs and their interests, but be mindful of their surroundings, be mindful that things can change in a minute, and what might be peaceful in 1 minute might turn tragically violent the next.
Right, so you're saying what is reporters' privilege? Reporters don't really have privilege. What we have is access. And many of those journalists that were targeted by cops have a press pass which is issued by the LAPD. Mine is expired, but I do have one. You have to go down there. You have to be fingerprinted. You've got to talk to the cop that's over that. They take your picture with their little camera, and they give you weeks later, a laminated press pass, which means you are in their system. That's not a privilege, but it's meant to grant you access to crime scenes and protest scenes so that you could report on what's happening. And that's a violation of our ability to do our job.
Because the police don't want the journalists there watching as they do what they do, out of fear that they will report when they do something wrong, and that will rise political anger, public anger against them. So the officers, emotionally reacting, do not want the journalists there reporting on what they are doing, because they're often doing wrong.
Yeah, which is why we need to be there. We're supposed to be the eyes and ears
Yes.
of the public, and this is not supposed to be Gaza where they're just killing journalists,
Correct.
Mowing them down like nothing. We've got 60 seconds here. Attorney Douglas, what would you like to leave us with?
I always talk, and we talked about it here today, about the importance of people, of all your listeners, being involved in the jury system. Black people have power on jurors, and that power is palpable. And taking part in our justice system is something that I always encourage and implore your listeners and all listeners to take part in.
Yep. I wish we could make it, I wish we could level the playing field so that folks would be able to replace their wages when they were on juries. But I know you're right. If we don't show up.
And it's a fascinating experience. That's what I keep telling you. It's a fascinating experience.
Attorney Carl Douglas, as always, it's a pleasure to talk with you. Thanks so much for coming in.
Please have me back. I love your show. I love you and your show.
I appreciate that so much. Tavis Smiley's show is up next. He's got another jam-packed episode for you. And thank you for taking part in our inaugural Think Tank Thursday. That's what we call our Thursdays now. Don't forget to tap in. What is your social media?
Sure. CED.ESQ.
CED, Carl E. Douglas, Esquire. And you can find me at DiPrima Radio. We are at KBLA 1580 everywhere. Please like, follow, subscribe, and make smart-ass comments. Like my mama, the late, great Diane DiPrima used to say, history is now. Like I always say, we're making it together. Until tomorrow, be safe, be informed, one love.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Bree Wood with BIN News Now. Black D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser says federal
Reduction in carjackings.
She criticized masked ICE and National Guard troops, saying residents are living in fear.